Hello everyone, Assalamu alaikum to all, and welcome back with another amazing episode of the Future Jobs podcast. I'm your host Fahad JobsWala, and I'm student and interview captain at Rehan School Online Academy. So, as the podcast format, we invite amazing individuals, from all over the world, and we try to uncover the amazing aspects of their lives, including their personal and professional lives, and some more interesting things which is going on and which has happened in their lives. We'll try to uh, make a motivation. We try to provide an inspiration to all of you to take a stand and to make this world a better place. Today, um, joining me today is Bambi Lynn, an author, speaker, and advocate for healing through storytelling. Her memoir, The Journey of Josephine, the doll that mended a broken heart, is a powerful story of resilience, trauma, and hope. Through her book and platform, Healing Through Stories, Bambi inspires others to find strength in their own journeys. I'm excited to dive into her story and insights today. And she has authored many other books as well. And she mentioned a lot of books, and she's been to more than 170 podcasts as well. So this conversation is going to be the um, the result, the conclusion of after being on 170 podcasts, after writing these amazing books. We try to get the lesson. We try to get the amazing things from her journey. So hi, Bambi, how are you? And welcome
I
to the
am
show.
so good. I'm so glad to be on your show and and to talk about how when we have moments in our lives that we get to choose one road or another road, and and it's the roads that we choose that really help us to heal and to be transformed. Where we always go through crossroads in our lives.
Exactly, Bambi. And I believe that there are a lot of pupils, who are who contains amazing things in their lives, amazing things that happen in their lives. And when the people doesn't appears on the media, and when they just take all these things with them only, they couldn't share with other people. So I believe that that goes very a bit wrong. You've been on 170 podcasts, but there were other, different listeners. Now, I thought that I should bring you on my podcast as well to explore and to share your amazing life journeys with my listeners as well.
Well, I'm
That is
excited.
amazing.
Yeah, and I'm
Yeah.
excited, and I wanted to we can start off of telling a story about crossroads, about decisions that we need to make in our lives. When I my children were young, I homeschooled them. I had spent 27 years homeschooling, and there was a time that we were learning about the Oregon Trail and how people went out west in a wagon and things like that. And so I wanted my children to experience a wagon ride. And so I found an organization that would allow us to go on a covered wagon tour ride for 2 nights and 3 days. And during that time that we did that, it rained the whole entire time. So every single day we were on this wagon, and we would have to we came to a field that was owned by the Amish. And the Amish people would feed us that evening. So we'd have to pitch a tent, and we'd have to go through this trail in order to get, into the field. And it rained so much that it was muddy. It was just, we were soaked. And, and the horses were going through this field too. So there was a lot of manure, that was going on. And my children and I, we were city people, so we dressed like city people. But I had to make a decision as a mom. I had to decide as a mother, am I going to make or break this trip? Am I going to destroy the memory of this trip, or am I going to make this fun that when we sat around the table when they all got older, they would be discussing it? So I'm looking at all this mud and I'm looking at all this horse manure and all this rain. And I had to make a decision at that moment. I had to make a decision in the crossroads of a moment. And I looked at my sons and I looked at myself. I said, we're taking our shoes and socks off and we're going to walk barefoot through this instead of destroying our shoes and instead of destroying our clothes. So I had to make a decision. I had to make a decision. Was I going to make or break that trip? As a mom, we create an atmosphere for our children. And in anything in our lives, we have to make decisions. And when I made that decision that we were going to walk through all of this mud and we were going to walk through all this horse manure, it created an amazing memories for my children that they laugh about it still today. But I could have taken it and I could have lifted my hands up in the air and said, let's get out of here. I'm not doing this anymore. This is nuts. And I could have ruined a crossroads. It's kind of like when you look at your life and you look and we all have lemons in our lives. We all have things that happen in our lives that we're like, I just can't do this anymore. But when we begin to start looking at those decisions and the crossroads in our lives, and we can look at those lemons and say, you know what? Let's make some lemonade. Let's make some lemon cake. Let's do something with the lemons instead of constantly complaining that the lemons are sour. I had to make a decision that day when I was with my children. I had to decide that instead of looking at the rain and the horse manure and the mud, I had to look at an adventure that I had promised my children. So I think in everybody's life, we're in a crossroads continually. We're either going to look at the cup half empty or we're going to look at the cup half full. It's always our choice every single day of our lives.
Exactly. That was the great example of how decision creates, how much decision are important in our life, and how one decision can create a big difference, and it really
Absolutely.
creates, um, while we are taking the decision, we not really realize about that this is going to do s- something new in the future. And that was really great that you thought that I should do something like when my children's would be in my age, that they would be um remembering that thing. And and in good
Yes,
words, that is also very important to keep that thing in good words, while they would, you know remember that thing in bad words as well, if that decision would be not that good. So that's
absolutely. We
depends
carry
on
the
situation.
atmosphere. Absolutely. We carry the atmosphere and we can choose what atmosphere we want to be in. We can choose an atmosphere. Do we want to always be in an atmosphere of hate and of trauma and things? Or do we want to take our stuff that we have been through and do we want to create something better? Because I've learned over the years, my trauma and the things that I have been through and the abuse that I have been through throughout my life isn't, I'm not the only one. Many of us have gone through things that we wish we never gone through. Many of us have gone through a life and have gone through something that felt like a punch in the stomach and that we can't breathe because of what we have gone through. But it doesn't, we don't need to stay there. Just because I was, when I wrote my book, The Journey of Josephine, and how my doll mended a broken heart, I had brokenness since I was a little girl. I came from a dysfunctional home. I came from a grandfather that was a dirty old man. My dad was an alcoholic. We didn't, we moved a lot, in my life. I had experienced attempted suicide. I was married to a man that I became a victim of domestic violence, but all of those things that happened to me have happened to many people. The data shows that it happens to many people. When you think about women that have been sexually abused, it's 2 out of 4 women. It's 2 out of 5 boys. So the things that happened to me, they've happened to a lot of people, but it's what you do with it. It's when you finally take it and say, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired of being the person that's the victim. I want to be able to crawl out of that pit and out of that hole. And I want to be somebody that represents survival. I want to be somebody that represents that we can thrive, that we can go through things in our lives, but yet we can still, be something great, because those things don't have to define us. And I think that so many times people define their life through what they have been through. But there comes a point that you don't have to do that anymore, that you can rise from that, and you could use what you have been through in your life to bring healing to other people. And that's why I started, my LLC of Healing Through Stories, because I think the more that we tell our stories, the more that we realize we're not by ourselves, the more that we realize we're not an island, the more that we realize is that we're a community and we can lock arms together because we share a commonality of abuse. But I want to lock arms with you and say we share a commonality, but I also don't want to stay there. And I don't want other people to stay in those situations in their lives, in their mind. Let's start healing. Let's start representing. If you are a born again Christian and you know Jesus or anything, there should be something different about me then. I shouldn't continue to walk as if I'm full of trauma all the time. I should be able to walk and being able to show that I do have a relationship with my Heavenly Father. And you should be able to see it on my face and not see only the trauma that I have been through in my life.
Amazing. So Bambi, how's your journey? And 170 podcasts, after being guest on 170 podcasts, and after writing these amazing books.
Say what was your question?
How's your journey of being an author of these amazing, wonderful books and being guest on more than 170 podcasts?
The journey has been amazing because we live now in a time that we can share our stories. I'm 55 years old. So the things that happened to me as a little girl, we never were allowed to share those stories. It was a secret. There were secrets that happened in our homes and we weren't allowed to share them. But now we live in a society today that says, let's tell our stories. Let's realize we all meet in the middle. And there was years ago, when I was in my 20s, I'm a mother of 6 children. I had 4 babies before the age of 22 years old. And then I had identical twin boys, at 28. So I had 6 children in my 30s. And there was a time that I had a pressure canner, which is a canning thing, a pressure canner blow up on me with spaghetti sauce in it. And I had to go to a burn unit for 17 days. And as you're in a burn unit and you get burned, the doctors and the nurses are trying to scrub the burn, to try to get rid of the residue and try to get rid of the scrubbing. So they put you on this table and they tie you up and they stick morphine in you as they're trying to scrub. And I think that that's what happens when you're ready to want to be healed. You have to be scrubbed of the residue. You have to be scrubbed of the pain and the agony and the hurt and the betrayal. You have to be scrubbed of that. So the new skin, once they scrub you, they take skin from a different part of your body and they put that skin, on you where you have been burned. And it's new skin. And that's what happens when you decide that you don't want to be in the pit any longer, that you don't want to be the victim anymore. You allow the scrubbing and the healing to take place so that new skin can be on. So when I wrote my story, The Journey of Josephine, and I wrote my story, The Treasures of My Heart, and being vulnerable to be on all of these podcasts, I decided that I wanted to be vulnerable. I wanted it to be a superhero, that people ask me, what is your superhero, gift or whatever? And I tell them vulnerability, because I wanted to be somebody that was vulnerable enough to share my story, to have the courage to share my story so that others can share theirs. So I continue to share my story so it gives you the bravery and the courage to share yours. I continue to realize that there is healing through stories, because the more that you talk about it, the less damage that it has to you. The more you talk about it, the less residue that you have to deal with, that you have to scrub off. The more that you talk about it, the more that you realize you're not the only one, and you can lock arms with other people and give and be able to be healed. I sell t-shirts that say, my story, your first aid kit, because we're passing on a first aid kit into other people's lives to be able to be transformed and use their messy life and turn it into a message that other people can hear and they can learn from, and they can also heal from. And that's my desire. And that's why I continue to go on all of these different podcasts to share with you that it's okay that you had a messy life. Now let's turn your messy into a message.
What an amazing connection between messy and message. And I think that is only some words missing in messy, and when we add those words, it become a message. So
Absolutely.
it is really great that you didn't hesitate, sharing your journey with others. Even the journey which you have, wasn't that good, but you still didn't hesitate while sharing that story to others, but you had that thing in your mind
Yes, absolutely.
that
Because it's got to start
when
somewhere.
I share. Exactly. So Bambi, which one was the most favorite podcast where you've ever been on, and which book you like most?
Oh my goodness. I've been on so many cool podcasts and we've become friends. Those that allow you to tell your story and know that they've created podcasts for that same reason, for that same purpose, because they see that there are stories behind everybody's life. And I love the podcasters that are just as hungry as the guests are, that you're just as hungry, to want to make a change. You and I discussed, that I have a child your age. And for the fact that you at this age want to make a difference. Those are the kind of podcasts that you want to be on, the ones that want to make a difference, that are hungry for a difference, that you're not settling for status quo. And so I love being on podcasts that aren't settling for status quo, that look at the life of people all around them and realize that every single one of us have a story. Every single one of us have gone through something or something in our lives that somebody else needs to hear. So, and even like when I read it, when I think about my books, that I've read, of course, The Journey of Josephine was my raw account of my life. And that brought healing, because when I read that book for the first time, when they gave it to me, when Amazon sent it to me, and I spent 6 hours reading it, I closed the book and I said, oh my goodness, God, I'm not this little girl anymore. But now I want to find this little girl, and I want to hug every single little girl that has been through the same things that I have gone through. When I have been writing my third book for at least 20 years, of women of the Bible, that I have taken these women, and I have delved in to find their stories. And so, when that book comes out in June, The God Who Sees, it happens to be, the story of Hagar is where I got my title from, is The God Who Sees. And Hagar was the concubine of Abraham. And Sarah, didn't want to wait on God, to have a child. But, so he had Hagar, and here Sarah throws Hagar out into the desert. And Hagar is going, what's going to happen to me? What's going to happen to me? And she then says that the God who sees saw her. And so that was the purpose of why I titled my book "The God Who Sees," was because of the story of Hagar, because God did see her in the midst of her pain, that he did see her and he was going to provide for her and he wasn't going to leave her alone, and that everything that had happened to her, God says, I see you, Hagar. I see you. And I think, and I believe that God says that to every single woman. I see you. I do see you. I do see the pain. I do see what you've been through. And I want you to know that I'm the God who sees, and the God that redeems, and the God that sets free. And that's why I wrote, my book, The God Who Sees, that will be coming out in June, because I wanted women to understand that they can serve a God that sees. And because he does see you, he doesn't just see men, he sees you. And that we can find comfort in the fact that he sees us.
Exactly, exactly. God sees everyone, every living creature who is living in this world, including man, woman, child, daughter, animals, insects, and whatever, and even God here's the conversation between the ants, you know between the insects. Even they are even that smaller that we can't even see them correctly. If we want to see them, we have to put them on our hands, and then we have to do like this if we want to see
Yes.
them. But God hears the conversation between them, and God provides um, the food to them. So that is really interesting about your book. So the God Sees You is your most favorite book which you have ever wrote.
I
So
would say, yeah, I would say because it's taken me so long to write it, because there's so many women that I wanted to tell their stories. There's so many. When you think about even the story of Deborah in the Bible, that God called her to be a judge. And when they were in the whole thing about the story of Deborah is that when God called her to be a judge, she came from her father, and her family came from Egypt, and and they came, into the promised land. That even her father, when you think about it, her father had to speak life into her as a slave in Egypt. He had to believe that his daughter was going to be something, and he spoke that life. And during that time, women had no value. We had value to God, but we didn't have value to man. And for her father to be able to speak that to her, even as a little girl, as he's still stuck in slavery, but gets to go to the promised land, and they live in the promised land, and she becomes a judge, and God calls her to judge the nation of Israel. That's pretty profound in a time that no woman was ever going to be. If man had a choice, as a woman, she wasn't going to be called to be a judge, but God called her to judge the children of Israel. That's pretty awesome to me, that God sees, the God who sees every situation and every circumstance, and he brings it to pass.
yeah, exactly. So Bambi, you've mentioned 30 or more than 30 stories of different women. So how much time does that took, while gathering their stories and doing that stuff? How much time?
Well, it's taken over 20 years, because I've had this idea for 20 years and have gradually written stories. Um, but then I finally, once I wrote The Journey of Josephine, and once I wrote The Treasures of My Heart, I knew it was time to write, The God Who Sees, and to put it all together, and to take all the stories and to all of the messages that I have written, and to combine them together and to send that off to my editor. I knew it was time. And I just think it's going to be an incredible book and an incredible realization for women to know that God never left you. He never forsook you. And he gave us stories within the word of God to prove to us that he is our healer and he does care for every single jot and tittle, of our lives. And I hope that when it comes out, that I have done justice, for the women that have been struggling and hurting and calling out and going, where are you, God? Where are you? And he has been in the pages of the Word of God. And now I hope that my stories bring those pages to life.
Exactly. You're the representative of those women, who have marked the history. Their struggles, their pain marked the history, and the people who were teasing them, you know, they've just gone from the history. But those women who were the victims,
Yes,
they are still alive in the pages of the book.
absolutely.
So
And they're alive in us, as women. It
yeah.
doesn't matter how anybody else looks at us. It doesn't matter how cultures or demographics or race treat us as women. God says that we're royalty. God says that we're daughters of the king, just as much as he says that sons are sons of the king. He says the same thing for us. And that we don't have to be feeling like we are lower. Even
Mhm.
like during the Bible times, and the Jewish people, when they were praying and thanking God that they weren't born women. I want to give women the opportunity to thank God that I was born a woman, and that it's not a curse, to me, because we carry the seed. We carry the seed of our children and the children that are coming forth, into the generations to come forth. There is purpose in us. And I hope that my book shows women that God has a purpose for you. And you were born to be a woman because he had such an amazing purpose and plan for your life. And he calls you royalty just as much as he calls man.
Exactly, and I believe that there would be not the difference, there wouldn't be a difference between the man and the woman, they both have the same equality. And the men who are um, underestimating or overestimating the woman's, the
Yes,
power, so they're just fool. I would say they're a fool, because if there would be not women in the world, so, and even the men's are by their mothers, if their mothers
absolutely.
wouldn't be in the world, so how they would be in this world. So
Absolutely.
women's and men have the same equality. And there was a time when women's considered them a curse, like if we bring the book of history, and if we start reading
Yes,
that, so when then we come to realize that uh, there was a time, in Egypt, and there was a king, an Egyptian. I don't know what you call in that king in English, but that is Pharaoh, maybe Pharaoh, or that kind of word
Pharaoh.
you
Yes,
have,
we call him Pharaoh.
Pharaoh.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So that was the man who teased women, and that was the man who was burning, who assigned pupils. When you have daughters, so you have to bury them, lively,
Yes. Sacrifice
alive,
them. Yes.
under under the so that was the very difficult time. And now, thank God that women are now safe from that, and that Pharaoh has gone, and the thousands of women who are sacrificed,
Yes.
alive, so now
Yes.
they would be in the heaven.
Yeah, and I just
So
think that every religion is finally understanding the value of women and how God look, because man has their own ideas. And when we become superior, over people instead of meeting people where they're at, we have a distaste of different things in our, in our lives. And I just think it's a new day, and everybody goes through things in their lives. And, I love the fact that you and I are even having this conversation of, realizing my book, The God Who Sees, you know, brings a realization on how much God loves us, and how much that he has provided for us and how much he has given us direction within the word of God and how he has taught us to look to him. Because if you look to him and you don't look to man, your life is so much better if you're looking to him and his ideas and not man's ideas. There's a whole difference between man's ideas and God's ideas.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly, Bambi. And God have created this creature called human woman with a purpose, and that purpose is
Absolutely.
very strong purpose. We don't realize that, and we still haven't realized about the importance of women. But there is a strong purpose behind creating these women.
Absolutely. And
So and
it's great that we're having this conversation.
yeah, and we want more. We want more on this topic because that is a very important topic. But we don't have, unfortunately, we don't have that host and guest who are talking on this topic.
Yes.
I noticed that people only bring those topics which are on trending, and but we are overestimating such things which are really important. We are bringing such fool and about Bugatti, Lamborghini, and such kind of stuff, which is something what the important topics which you are overestimating and underestimating. What about that? We have to think about that, and we have more. We want more guests and
Yeah.
hosts to talk on this topic. And the another aspect related to your life is that I want to leave my audience listeners with this fact that you've been consistent on your with your work, and you've
Yes.
sacrificed your 20 years, while gathering these stories and mentioning them in the book. That is a very, I believe, uh, you should have a strong appreciation on this.
Yes.
Like you would leave that thing, in just 5 or 10 years. That, come on, who would put that struggles and efforts on it? But you were being that consistent that you've um, given your 20 years to that book. So
Yes.
that is super amazing. And the conclusion and the I would say the result of this conversation is that women's men's are equal. And as
We just
the
have different roles. And that's what people don't,
exactly
we just
different
have
roles.
different roles. We're equal, but just different roles. I don't want a role of a man. I like being a woman. I don't want to take your role, but we're equal and we walk side by side with each other. We just have
In the
different
parts.
roles.
Exactly.
Yes.
Even women's and men's walk in the park, side by side. They're holding their hand because uh, it creates the message that you are equal. You know,
Absolutely. And
uh,
there's unity. Absolutely.
exactly. So we should provide the same rights to the women's as we are providing the rights to the men's.
Yes.
We don't have that women's in our industry, in our offices. Why? Because when any woman comes in the office, men's tease them. Men's don't let them work on that. So that's why they leave that office, and the other women's being afraid of that thing you know
Yes.
so thank you so much, Bambi Lynn, for giving your precious time to me. And it was really a great conversation on your personal and professional life journeys you had on the rights of women.
Yes, I thank you so much for having me on and allowing me to share my story. And if there's anybody out there that wants any more information, please go to my website, healingthroughstories.com. There you can purchase my books. You can also subscribe to my website. And, if you subscribe to my website and you want to purchase my book, you get a 10% discount, on my book. So go over. And if you're looking for a life coach, somebody that will be able to help you along the journey of your life and give you options, please, look me up. You can find me on social medias, all kinds of social medias, but absolutely go to my website, healingthroughstories.com, and sign up to subscribe to my website and read some of the blogs that I have written. But this was an amazing
Amazing.
event. I appreciate it.
Amazing. I believe that that is a great deal, and that is a great I would say uh the offer which she is offering, like 10% discount. So go and subscribe to her
Absolutely.
website and get her book with 10% discount. So guys, see you with another amazing and another podcast with another amazing guest to bring another important topic which we are over and underestimating in our lives. Till then, stay peace and take care of yourself. See you in another episode. Bye bye.